Hey folks, today I'm talking about Pluto in the Sidereal Zodiac. And I'm going to be actually looking at the last several transits of Pluto going back to 1980. And yes, you can track the transits of Pluto in sidereal rashis to give an indication of the type of deep kind of transformational work that we'll be doing, that society is doing, sort of on a collective level. Now, you might be saying, Sam, I didn't know you used outer planets. Well, here's the thing. Outer planets can certainly be used when you look at larger cultural implications, especially. Now, again, there are Vedic astrologers who use them in their natal chart assessments and all of that too, which, if people want to do it, they can do it. It's not part of the Vedic astrology text, especially the horoscopic astrology that we're doing. That horoscopic astrology only shows the planets out to Saturn because those are the visible planets, and that shows our visible karma when we incarnate here on Earth. And the visible karma that shows up, we're assessing the sun through Saturn and all of the ways those configurations are laid out. And in the Vedic astrology text, you have different methods that analyze those visible planets and our visible karma related to those visible planets, the things that show up that way. So the outer planets aren't visible to the naked eye, and Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, definitely the way I see them, and I think it's valid, especially in context of using Vedic astrology, to do readings and to understand the karma and the energy of individuals, especially, and our karmic unfolding. They don't really work in that context, at least not the way I work, particularly with all the specific tools available to us. But as far as looking at larger cultural movements and themes and things that are transpersonal, they're even really called the transpersonal planets, things that relate to society and culture, I see that they can definitely be utilized for that. And so today I'm going to be talking about that. And again, this is, there are some people who do that in Vedic astrology, and it's fine to do it. I don't care. Again, I'm not the astrology police. I do have views about it. I have opinions about it. And one of the things I will just say, so that when it comes up, I don't have to keep answering it, is, one thing that I've noticed is that often astrologers that I've seen, some of them, and I'm not going to say all of them, because again, an astrologer that's been practicing a long time, they have better usage of it. But I see a lot of people that rely too much on the outer planets, especially when they're trying to do Vedic astrology, and they bring in outer planets before they really understand how to practice Vedic astrology the way it is. Literally, it's practiced a certain way. It's laid out. You have dignity, you have the functional nature of the planets as house rulers, the yogas, the dashas, the harmonic charts, nakshatras. There's so much there that, I never do it in my natal chart reading because you simply don't need it, and it's simply not part of that practice. So again, if someone brings in outer planets in addition in some ways to add nuance, okay. But again, for example, there's no Pluto dasha, no Uranus dasha. What is our karma with those planets? It's not part of the practice. So if you bring those things in and you rely on them too heavily, you're kind of, you're sort of mixing things. And again, when I say rely on them too heavily, I've seen many Vedic astrologers that use outer planets, or what are called neo-Vedic astrologers. That's what they call themselves. I don't say it to be demeaning. That's the term they use. That they go to I hear them talking about the astrology chart, and half the time they're talking about Pluto. It's like, you're talking about a Pluto trend. Okay, I get it. you're talking about Pluto transit to natal charts. You're not even talking about the dashas. You're not even talking about the functional nature of the planets. You're not even talking about Raja Yogas. You're not looking at nakshatras. You're not looking at harmonic charts. But you can't stop talking about Pluto. I'm thinking, okay, you want to do Vedic astrology at some point? Because that's actually the system. So this is the only thing I would caution people about using outer planets. So with all of that said, again, one of the main things that I see, and I've been tracking, especially Pluto, and seeing the transit of Pluto and its impact on culture, since I've been doing astrology, and also, Uranus Pluto squares, Neptune oppositions, and all this. It can definitely show us a lot about cultural trends. And you might be shocked, but Sidereal Zodiac works really well. You never believe it. No. So I have a handout here, and I'll actually put this underneath the video here for you to download. That tracks the most recent transit of Pluto. And again, there are going to be people here, talking about, how great the outer planets are in Vedic astrology, and that's fine. Again, I'm not the astrology police, but I will just tell you, and I will just say it this last time, and then I'll move on, because I already see people, this Lampose Ernesto, relax, man. I use them and love them. Great. It's great. I'm glad you do. You want to make sure that you also learn Vedic astrology as well, because they're not in the Vedic astrology texts. And if you're not integrating things like dignity, things like avashtas, things like Raja Yogas, Nichabanga, Viparit Raja Yogas, Mahapurusha Raja Yogas, Nabhasa Yogas, harmonic charts, nakshatras, functional nature of planets, all of this stuff that's part of Vedic astrology, Shadbala. If you're not doing all of that, you're really not practicing Vedic astrology. That is the practice. The dasha cycles, again, there is no Uranus dasha, Pluto dasha. Again, when you do these things correctly, you see clearly why karmas are ripening based on the planets, what the planets rule, as their functional nature, their nature as a Shtira Karaka, as a Chara Karaka, activating different karmas. Again, all of this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto is outside of that whole thing that makes Vedic astrology scientific. And so again, when I hear people and they're not doing any of that really accurately, or they're not even evaluating and using the tools in Vedic astrology, and they're just talking endlessly about outer planets, again, it doesn't mean it won't work, but it's not really, it's neo-Vedic astrology, but I would recommend that people actually learn the Vedic astrology the way it was conceived of and practiced for several thousand years before we even started to discover the outer planets. So that's all I'm saying. It's not a contest or a lecture, but I think people should do it that way. So anyway, here is the, whoops. So right now, what just happened is we have Pluto. I have this handout here, Pluto in the sidereal Rashis. So Pluto actually went into sidereal Capricorn, according to Lahiri and Amsha, on, it was late February 27th. So late February, Pluto went into sidereal Capricorn. And what I see happening here, Pluto goes in and brings a lot of pressure, transformational energy. It's similar, you might say, to what we might call certain qualities of Saturn, with more explosive, with a lot of explosive potential. And but at least the seriousness and the focus, because it's there for a long time, it's about 12 to 13 year cycle. And it brings this sort of transformational pressure in the sign that it is going through. And by the way, I don't assign any rulerships to these planets. Again, I think it's a mistake. It's part of Western astrology, where Pluto is said to rule Scorpio, and Neptune to rule Pisces, and Uranus to rule Aquarius. Again, I don't assign any rulerships here. This is just, again, it's not, so I'm not talking about it like it's the ruler of Scorpio and all that stuff. No way. but it brings this kind of transformational power, kind of like a Lord Shiva type of energy, to get in there and bring a lot of pressure and destruction and transformation. All right. It's very much like Shiva energy. And so it just entered Capricorn at the end of February this year. Now, again, we look at what Capricorn is, and it's, Capricorn is that energy of structure, materiality, that can be wealth, that can be a lot of things, especially our monetary systems and those structures that we have in our life. Now, I'm going to talk more about that. That'll be the rest of the presentation. But first, I want to just go back and also show you the transit of Pluto and the time cycles to go backwards. So before that, and I loosely group this around the presidents of the United States. Again, this is where I live, but we can see the clear cycles actually. But you can just group this wherever you live or historically, however you see it. I talk about it on larger global events as well. But Pluto went into Sagittarius. Again, I have March 19th because I just went back these years, but you can see it was just barely going in there in early 2005. Now, that was right at the beginning of George W. Bush's second term, all the way through Obama's term, and then the end of Trump. So again, from 2005, from the end of 2005, this has been about 15 years. Yeah, it was in Sagittarius a long time. That's right. So the end of 2005, this has been about a 15-year transit. Through the second George W. Bush, Obama, and then the end of Trump, there was a focus on ethics, religiosity, I said, political correctness, both tolerance and intolerance. So this is a time when, again, when it started, at least in the world, we had had the 9/11 attacks, we had went into war with Iraq. This was in the U.S. and the global news was sort of dominated by these kinds of things. And then at the end, once that happened, again, George Bush was voted out of office. He became very unpopular. All of that became extremely unpopular. We started to there was more of a rise of fundamentalism and religiosity, I'm saying, like splinter groups, more like ISIS, and all this got even more splintered. But we also saw a lot more political correctness, right and left, much more polarizing. We had the rise of Obama, this wave of hope and change. Again, at least the rhetoric around that. Again, this was in Sagittarius. This is Pluto in Sagittarius. But then we had Obama, and then the opposition to Obama. I'm talking about U.S. politics, so forgive me. That's in many ways my frame of reference, but you can look at it from where you've been. And we had the Tea Party, which was a very strong conservative backlash against Obama and the hope, that audacity of hope, again, Pluto and Sagittarius, the religiosity, but also the tolerance, the more tolerance for gays. And look at all the tolerance that's also come with Pluto, with Pluto having gone through Sagittarius, gay marriage and all these other things, more equality around the world, Me Too movement, all this kind of stuff, but also an equal response to it. So all this polarizing around our fundamental beliefs, a rise of fundamentalism on both ends. That's why I also said PC correctness, which is a thing of the left, where the liberal political, everything is so politically correct as well. You can't say anything without offending the offense. Everybody's so easily offended on the left as well. Got to be tolerant for everyone, and anything you could say that could offend anyone, you need to shut up about. Again, so in many ways, Trump is kind of as a president, he's kind of a response to that because he's so politically incorrect. So again, this sort of rise of this kind of polarizing, this was around the Sagittarius themes from about 2005 to about 2020 that we've just had. Now, again, these are a little uneven. You can see these are rough dates. I didn't go back and find the exact moment because sometimes it goes retrograde and back in. But if we look, for example, March 1993, Pluto had just gone into Scorpio. I think it had gone in a little earlier, again, because it was retrograde at that point, about 1 degree. So it had gone in maybe a little earlier. But again, this roughly coincides with the Clinton administration through George Bush the first cycle. So from like 1993 to around 2005. And again, this was Clinton coming in. And again, we see this rise of like an internet economy, the dissolving of geographic boundaries, especially for commerce, but also the underbelly of that, because it was in Scorpio. Also a lot of there was like a great spiritual renaissance in many ways because of the internet. This was really like the rise of the internet, and also like the dark web and all of the stuff that has come as a result. And so again, Scorpio is a lot of the hidden stuff. When Pluto was going through Scorpio, especially the first part of it, by the end of it, we started to see, especially the rise of the internet and a lot of this global commerce starting, and the dissolving of the boundaries. Again, this is the Scorpio part, because it's this water sign where all of the hidden power was there, and that like internet. But we also saw, it was also a big rise in terrorism. By the end of this, we saw, like, again, this was the time, again, from 1993 to about 2005. This includes like 9/11. This includes even terrorist attacks that happened before that, like World Trade Center bombing, the Oklahoma City bombing. We started to see really a rise of terrorism. There was also the attack in Japan where they poisoned people. So we started to see this rising. There was also the, the Yugoslavia, Sarajevo, the Bosnian war and stuff like that, ethnic cleansing. There was a lot of darkness during that time as well that we forget. Globally, we had a lot of these, a lot of this, going on. So during that time, this was Pluto through Scorpio, again, sidereal. Now, if we go back even to the previous time, March 1981, that was like the beginning of the Reagan and Bush administrations, literally like 12 years of Republicans in the U.S., and we saw a rise of conservatism around the world. You had Thatcher in England. You had, I think, even Helmut Kohl in Germany. This was still, by the end of this, the Cold War had finished, and the Berlin Wall fell. Ultimately, by the end of it, as Pluto got at the end of Libra and towards Scorpio, this was when the Soviet Union fell, and things started to get liberated. But we can see, again, this was Pluto in Libra. And what we see here, 12 years of Republican admins in U.S., global conservatism, trickle-down economics, a lot of the shattering of our, of a more equal, like egalitarian culture really started in the 80s. The 80s, there were problems, of course, in the 70s and the 60s with all kinds of, shortages and things like that, and inflation, like economically. But what happened in the 80s is this extreme conservatism. We've never really recovered from it. Wealth inequalities started to grow in the 80s. That's really when all of these conservative policies, especially as it relates to putting in financial policies, literally what's called trickle-down economics, started all around the globe. And it really started this rush, this wealth inequality, this wealth gap started to grow like we've never seen before that. It started in the 80s. Again, all this conservatism, and you can see this Pluto going through Libra, which again, it's kind of going in there and destroying and shocking and transforming the social systems and structures in that regard. So there was a lot of wealth, but the uneven distribution of it really happened a lot in when Pluto went through Libra. So kind of overview of some of these shifts, and you can see these are rough dates. So if those of you go in and say, oh, it actually went in there like a year earlier and then went retrograde, that's very possible. I didn't spend 3 years putting together these dates. These are rough transits of Pluto moving through sidereal signs, showing these large shifts that have happened. And so again, this is just to give context to where I see things moving now in the next, 12 to 15 years, you would say. And that's really this Pluto in Capricorn, which, again, Capricorn is the sign of money, monetary systems, structures, boundaries, and the things that hold everything together, like the, again, like the ties that bind. When you look at Capricorn, one second. The Capricorn part in your life is very much about, again, those things that you focus on, that you're committed to, this sort of concentration of energy toward things that are working, that you're working hard to preserve, that you want to work hard to keep. Again, things like your money, even things like insurance and planning for the future. So again, what we've seen since since Pluto first went into Capricorn, February 27th, I believe was the first day, but just notice what we've seen with the global financial markets. This is the biggest thing that I'm worried about right now. Again, we have a real serious global issue right now, pandemic, that we're all dealing with, that we're going to get through. It's not going to kill everybody, but it's very dangerous, and it's very sad that anyone would get deathly ill or sick or even die. And I don't minimize that at all. I sure as hell don't want to get sick. I've been inside, and I'm planning for that, and I want us all to be healthy and get through this. But the real thing that's happening, what Pluto is really doing, and what this Capricorn energy is, are the things that are the structures that we have in the world. And this tenuous structure that we have. And what's going on right now is we realize just how vulnerable we are in all of these different ways. That all of these structures that we thought, okay, this is in place, got it. We're going to be able to get food, we got gas, we got this, we got that, we got money, we got this, we get on our airplane, we eat our food. There's really no consequence. It's all here. It's all this solid structure that's all afloat. Well, look at how quick it can get undermined. Pluto is related to things that are hidden, like nuclear energy, atomic energy. It was discovered right at the time that we discovered the atom, and we started splitting the atom, and before you know it, we had nuclear energy. So Pluto is related. Pluto is the smallest. It's not even considered a planet anymore, but it's the smallest of planets. It's like, again, these are invisible forces. We don't see them with our naked eye. But Pluto is definitely related to nuclear energy. We even have the chemical plutonium. It's a product of nuclear fission. This is one of the atoms that we split. We split plutonium, uranium, plutonium, uranium, Uranus, plutonium. So again, something like a virus, of course, is not atomic energy, but it's the same sort of category of energy. It's the same energetic category, you might say, because it's something hidden and invisible that we don't see, that can like infect us and change and transform on a level that we're not noticing. So we see that the rise of this pathogen is not only infecting people, it's not only dangerous on a physical level, but it's threatened the very structure of our world. It's revealing the interconnectedness of everything. And it's putting pressure on those things that we've taken for granted. Again, those Capricorn things. This idea that, oh, I'll have money, I'll have food, I'm healthy, I have options, I can go here, I can go there, I'm on it. Well, Pluto is basically shaking that tree. And it's going to be doing it for 12 years. This is the new shift that's happening. It's shifting the Capricorn quality of life. It's just been shifting and transforming and polarizing. This is one of the main things I see with Pluto, is this polarizing effect. And because everything is an evolutionary process, it leads to something better, but it also is very destructive and transformative in the process. So, again, just like the previous 15 years or so, 12 to 15 years with Pluto and Sagittarius, we can see how much our life has been driven by a kind of religiosity, a kind of political correctness, a polarizing around what's right, what's not right, what's fundamental, like fundamental religion, fundamental democracy, fundamental conservatism, fundamental socialism, progressivism, gender issues, everything, everything is a cause. Everything is like, we're so driven by a purpose and a belief about things. And we saw a rise of both progressivism and fundamentalism and religious acceptance and intolerance. The same way with political and social and all of it. We also realize with Jupiter going through Sagittarius, the interconnectedness of how all of these things aren't really segregated as much. Now through Capricorn, it's going to be this, especially this relationship to money and value and the value exchange, and how we're not honoring the resources. Because underneath it all, everything is a resource. And when you get to Capricorn energy, this is what we have. Because with Capricorn, everything is a commodity. This is one of the strengths of Capricorn, and also one of the weaknesses. Is Capricorn, the Capricorn energy sees everything as a value exchange. Values, monetary on some level, and wanting to extract value or give value. And so this whole crisis that we're in right now, again, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. And to those who are, their virgin ears can't hear me talk about things like the mistreatment of animals or something like that, prepare yourself. Again, there are people that get upset. But again, this started in China. It might have actually originated from a lab near the actual wet market. But even so, it was still a lab that was working on and researching and working with viruses that came from animals. Again, no matter how you look at it, our relationship with the earth, with nature, over and over again is at the heart of a lot of these problems that we're looking at and that we're being forced to correct. What's been the solution? The solution is to stay home. I mean, look at what we're being told to do. The biggest problem is that we're being told to now stay home, like stay home or die. And one of the things that's actually happened, it's pretty amazing, it's pretty remarkable that in these, what's been the result, like in Italy and in China and in these other places where mass sequestering and mass quarantining has happened, is the environment. If you saw, many of us have seen this now, where, the aggregate result of China shutting down for a month was, hey, we have blue sky. Wow, imagine what happens if human beings would just stop doing what they're doing for a while. The whole world rejoices. In Italy, especially like in Venice, you could see the water is clear. Just a couple weeks of not stirring it up and all the clutter of human beings just acting like we're the gods of everything. You're even seeing where like meat packing plants in the US and other places where we're doing all this stuff, we're scared to eat it. There could be contaminants. And, you know, this is a huge part of the lesson that I hope we learn. We're getting an opportunity to see this. But what I'm saying is that even just the beginning of this crisis came from viruses that jump from humans or from animals, this class of coronaviruses like bats and camels and pangolins and other ones, into humans. By the way, I don't think it was a bioweapon. If they don't need to develop bioweapons. There's such an easier way to develop a bioweapon. Bioweapons are easy. You can take anthrax and other kinds of things and disperse it if you wanted to use a bioweapon. You wouldn't try to make a bioweapon that's going to kill half of your own people. That's probably not what happened. It might have been engineered in that lab, and then somehow maybe an animal ate it or it got out somehow and then got into that market. These ideas that it was a bioweapon is probably, they just don't make sense, okay? And again, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but these are the kinds of thought viruses that we have. I think it's frankly a dumb idea. Again, it's easy to make bioweapons. You can engineer bioweapons very easily. The world has bioweapons all over the place, okay? You wouldn't do that to engineer a bioweapon, particularly when it's going to get unleashed in your own country. Or we live in a world now where they know if they release it, it's going to come back to them as well. You wouldn't release it. You wouldn't make a virus like this because it can kill us all, as we see. So this, so anyway, but this, this whole nature of what is going on now with our world is being challenged, and Pluto is trying to, Pluto and Capricorn, all this Capricorn energy is saying, I think for the next, 12 to 15 years, we have to transform, we have to change. It's unsustainable. That's the point. What we're doing now is unsustainable. It literally is unsustainable. We all know it. Anybody who has a brain can see we cannot keep doing this forever. We do not have infinite resources. We can't just constantly keep getting on planes and going everywhere. These cruise ships, one of the first things we saw, that industry needs to go. It probably needed to go a long time ago. They're floating disease factories. If it doesn't go, then I don't think that industry will ever recover. And it shouldn't, I think. Again, and if you work in the cruise industry, I'm sure it's a fun thing to do, but it's just a luxury. It's mass pollution. It's unsanitary. Those ships, again, it's like, but we can't just keep extracting from the earth and think there is no consequence. We can't just treat animals like our property and cut them up and bring them in these wet markets with their fluids going everywhere and aspirating viruses and wild animals with domestic animals. All of the murder of animals, eventually we will pay the price for that. Karma is real. And again, this whole sustainable, here we are, human beings doing whatever the hell we want as if none of it matters, needs to change at some point. And here it is. Capricorn says, okay. That's the nature of Capricorn. I had a, I did a meme on Instagram. Those of you who didn't see it, some of you follow my Instagram, but I'll show it to you if you haven't seen it. Pull it over here. And, it's basically that it says, Saturn in Capricorn is now saying, go home and be alone or die. It's kind of a joke, but this is also with Saturn. Of course, since Saturn moved into Capricorn, now here we are. Because again, we have Saturn and Pluto there. But again, this is the Capricorn quality. But I want to be really clear about something, though. Okay? I talked about this a couple days ago, and all of it is real, that transformation and change are positive. They're positive now because of all these planets are in good dignity. And it means that there's intelligence behind all of this. There's intelligence behind all of this. So there's a question here. Is Pluto Shiva energy or is it destructive Kali energy? Your question sounds like if it's Shiva energy, it's good. If it's Kali, it's destructive. They're the same energy. One is just the manifest form of the other. They're both positive. They're both transformational. Shiva is the source and Kali is the expression. So when you understand the way Hindu energetics work, the Shiva is the invisible force and Kali is the expressed action. So Shiva and Kali are the energies of transformation. And particularly because we have Saturn there in Capricorn, this is necessary transformation. This is a necessary destruction because we're immature children who don't learn until we have to suffer. It doesn't matter how much we try to, learn lessons. We don't learn any lesson until something gets taken away from us and until it gets difficult. Until it gets difficult, we just want to be a child. We want to be a baby. We want to keep getting the thing. Eventually, we push it to the point to where, like we've done as a species, what we're doing as a species to this earth is unsustainable. Everybody would say it. Everybody would know it. Everybody would agree who is a thinking person. But yet we never stop. We never change. We never do anything different until what? What do you think is going to happen one day? Something like this. And here's what I think. I think this is going to be difficult for the next couple months. I think it will wind up being much more merciful than we thought, because I think what's going to happen is when the weather gets hotter and these measures start to kick in more and the world starts to rally, I think it's going to be a couple months of difficulty. I said this in an update the other day, but the planets are in very good dignity. We're going to have Saturn in Capricorn the whole time. We're going to have Venus going into Taurus, which is going to be bringing healing energy. And then we're going to have the sun exalted in the middle of April. And so I think it'll eradicate quicker than we think after a lot of stress, because even right now, especially here in the US, our bozo leaders still aren't doing anything. They say it's a war effort, yet they're not doing anything. They're not mobilizing the resources to start building respirators and doing all the stuff. They're still not doing it. Again, it's at least a week overdue to where everything in this country should have been mobilized toward preparing for what's coming. And they're still not doing it. Yet, news conferences every day where they're like, the president has done this amazing thing. They just get up and slap each other's back. At least the leaders, the professionals are on it. But again, what's going to happen is when these planets go into Capricorn, which is by the end of this week and into next week, we're going to see it. It's going to crush, and then it's going to get really serious and severe. And then I think it's going to be more merciful than we think. This time, it'll start to abate, but it'll come back again, but we'll have time to plan for it. Because I think next year the seasonal changes will be, it'll resurface again, because it's also dependent on the weather. It needs cold, damp kind of weather. This is why if you look at the line through which it's infested, the hotter places, it hasn't really caught on as much. So anyway, without going so into that, the main thing I'm saying is Pluto going through Capricorn is showing about a 12 to 15 year shift where our entire monetary system, our entire relationship with money, with resources, with the earth, and with time itself is going to change. So what do I mean? Well, again, look at what we're being taught to do. We're being said, go home, stay home, work from home. Think of how many people can be working from home. How many people all of a sudden started working from home? Now, a lot of them haven't, especially if you work in service industries and other kinds of places where it's like especially like service industries and things like that. But think of all of the jobs now that can still keep going on, but people just working from home. Well, why haven't we been doing that the whole time? Why haven't we been working from home now for years? Okay, right now, this shift that we're having right now, we're not going to just suddenly forget that, hey, guess what? We can work from home. We're not going to forget it because coronavirus is over. Okay, now everybody come back into these buildings every day. No. This is going to fundamentally and radically shift the workforce, jobs, how we look at going to some building and sitting in a cubicle working on a computer, which is what most people's jobs are anyway, or going to a place, working on a computer, getting on a phone. All of these jobs, especially all these computer jobs, all of them could be done from home. And from here on out, that's going to be the standard. And that's a great thing for everybody. That's a great thing for people that work in these tech industries, that have to get up every day and go to some stupid office when they don't really need to do it. Very few people need to be in that office. You can stay in contact with each other. Think of all the gas that's saved, all the time that's saved. We should have been doing this now for 5 years at least. Now we're going to be doing it. That's going to be the standard. It's also cheaper for the businesses. It's going to be expected. This is going to be the new normal. Or at least the new standard. We have this, and what that's going to do is it's going to free up more of our time. So we're not only working from home with more time, but while we're there, again, think of all the time we get back. None of these stupid commutes and all that crap, sitting in traffic or whatever it is. We're in our local area and we can still get together and hang out much more easily, and we reclaim our time. Now, this also opens us up for more, for then people also using the online possibilities to explore things like astrology and all of this, because you're not spending so much of your time commuting back and forth in these work environments. So I think it's going to totally revolutionize work. I think that's one of the great things that's happening now eventually. We're going to see this. It's going to revolutionize the workplace for the benefit of all of us. Think of all the resources that won't be used. Think of all of the time that gets freed up. Just that. Wow. That is great. I think that it's going to also, especially if people who think it's valuable, like me, from here on out, I'm not going to shut up about this thing about animals and viruses and all this crap. I'm going to run my mouth about this now to the day I leave this planet. We need to stop this crap. That's it. What does it take for human beings to find other ways? And people that need, again, I've never said that no one should ever consume anything that comes out of an animal, because it's prescribed in Ayurveda at times, especially things like bone broth or certain kinds of meat at certain times, especially women who lose iron. There's all kinds of ways where some diet needs to be supplemented by meat products of some sort. And people who are conscious, especially people that aspire to live a life that doesn't have this cruelty built into it just because they like the taste of it or they're lazy or whatever it is, they have found a way to navigate that. And their need for some animal protein like eggs or something like that winds up getting satisfied without continuing this mindless, vicious brutality. And it's not just in China. In fact, I'm not even talking about China. I'm talking about in the civilized world as well. Because this practice, again, even if this just cuts down a little bit on those practices, and we have this within our grasp, because the only reason we eat so much meat is because of demand. It's very simple. People stop eating it, it will stop happening. You have absolute control over how much of this. Stop eating it. And that will be one less cow, or maybe 10 less cows and 10 less chickens killed a year, just if you stop, or however much of that stuff you eat if you're still eating it. Just like cigarettes or other things that we no longer, that we understand is a horrible practice, and the industry just goes away. People are going to stop wanting to get on these cruise ships. They just go away. The whole thing is supply and demand. Again, I hear people say, oh, you'll never stop people from eating meat. You'll never do it. That's frankly bullshit. You will absolutely stop people. As soon as they realize it's not healthy for them, they'll stop eating it. And not to mention, if they realize what it's doing to their body. And again, there will still be some of it because some bodies need some of it some of the time. And there's compassionate ways for this. All of that will continue and can continue. But that has nothing to do with the way we do this now. Nothing. That is absolutely a completely different paradigm. Having local, again, one of the problems is it's become this agro-business polluting nightmare that's just mindless. And this is coming back, and I think and hope and pray that people will wake up to this. Again, right now, you're going to have to wake up to it because you're going to see meat supplies there'll start to be a shortage of this stuff. By the way, guess what? You go to the supermarkets now. What does everybody stop stocking up on now? Meat? No, you can't buy a can of beans anywhere. You can't buy rice anywhere. Why? Because this stuff is the stuff of life, really. This meat, you got to keep it in the foil and the plastic and all of this. Again, this might really shift some people. It might be good to have people like, oh, we don't have any meat. Oh my God, we got to eat beans and rice. Oh, what are we going to do? Hey, this actually isn't so bad. Hey, I actually feel good. Hey, I can actually take a crap now. Hey, I'm not constipated because eating platefuls of meat every day that it takes me forever to digest. Wow, something about these grains that just go through me very easily. Wow. Maybe this will wake some people up. But again, if I'm the only one saying it, it doesn't matter. Somebody said here too, yeah, meat is expensive too. Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, of course, dairy, exactly. Of course, dairy, eggs. Dairy is probably as bad or worse, especially what we do with the cows. But not to mention it's cheap. I've actually stocked up, and I go to the stores, and I probably have about 3 months worth of food here, and it's not like I'm packed to the gills. I have like 3 or 4 big bags of rice. I got a lot of cans of beans. I have a lot of other stuff that, vegan stuff that's frozen or whatever here and there. It takes up nothing. It hasn't even cost that much money. Again, and even this stuff, it costs us money just to put chemical-laden processed death in your body. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. If you're eating processed meat, these animals have been tortured. They've been pumped full of drugs unnaturally. Dairy cows are the most abused animals on the earth. They impregnate them artificially with bull semen. Then once to get them lactating, and then once their calf is born, they take the calf away. The mother howls in pain. Then they suck her dry and do it again. This is a barbaric practice. Anyone who thinks that the milk you're drinking or the eggs, they put eggs, these hens and these chickens in these crates where they shit on each other, and it's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that's happening. That's why I'm not saying anything about China at this point. This is in the USA, all over the place. We're just as bad. We're just better at hiding it. That's all. The Chinese are just obvious about it. And again, I'm not blaming anything of this on the Chinese. problem that they're doing is it's less sanitary. It's in the open and it's mixing with wild animals. All of it is disgusting. And again, Pluto is here, and it's, again, if you want to see what Pluto is, again, as Shiva, Kali, this is what it is. It's saying, you want all of your stuff. You have this safety and security. You got it figured out. You know your money. Again, the money that's made off these animals and these practices. Again, there's other things. It's not just the animals, but look directly at what made this thing happen and what always makes these things happen. And look at how vulnerable we are because we do this kind of stuff. Then we release this thing because of something that came out of bats. Bats aren't bothering anybody. Leave them alone. This is a virus that's in a bat. It would never bother us. So I think and hope and pray that it will get us rethinking this. Eventually, we're going to stop doing it. It will happen eventually. And maybe this is what we need to have it happen. Again, that's what I think, hope, and pray. If I'm wrong, make me wrong, but I'm not shutting up about it anymore. I've always talked about it, but this is obvious now. And this is the kind of stuff that it takes to wake up. Amy Eager said, try a real burger, Beyond Burger. Tastes just like a real burger, totally vegan. I haven't even tried one because I've never liked the taste of meat. I've never liked the taste, especially of beef. I just never have. I get like regular vegan burgers that are like, they're not even made of mock meat, but like mushroom and kale, quinoa, or whatever. I mean, look, even meat, the taste comes from the seasonings and from all of that. You see people, they'll get a steak and then they'll dump steak sauce all over it. Man, just take a mushroom and put steak sauce on it. What the hell is the difference at that point? You're not even eating the meat. Anyway, I don't want to rant too much here because I can turn into a raving lunatic. But this is the kind of thing that I see happening here. And so this whole thing is also, Saturn in Capricorn. Again, we have Saturn and Pluto are both there. And so this, we can see, and Pluto is even closer now, and we're going to get Jupiter and Mars also there. So the reason I'm talking about this with Pluto, so again, instead of just looking at it as, oh, here's another bad one. Look, Pluto takes a while to start doing his stuff as well. It's not like, oh, immediately it's there. The slower the transit, the more it takes to start showing its energy. Excuse me. And right now, I don't even think we're seeing the Pluto effects as yet so much. What we're seeing now is the Saturn, the fact that Jupiter, K2, Mars interacted. I already explained that in a few videos. I did a recent one about what, the astrology of the coronavirus and moving forward. I just did it a couple days ago. Watch it, because I went back and showed all of the stuff, the eclipses and all that. Again, these are the things that show the visible things that are being shown. We can see the visible much more easily, at least a moment in time, with the visible planets. Pluto is showing the invisible long-term, what's happening, what's getting destroyed in a long-term way. What is the cycle that that's now getting destroyed and hopefully strengthened? And it's this kind of stuff. Getting back our time. Realizing how vulnerable we are with all of this horror that we've been putting forth, and how it, again, as soon as it starts to affect our money, then we get serious. So our whole monetary system as well, because Capricorn is about money and value and exchange. This is why we're seeing, again, what's making us really get serious is we see this effect on the stock market. Again, we don't have the stock market, but the stock market is an extension of what is supporting us. So what's supporting the banks and the capital and the fiat capital underneath everything. If all that stuff just gets destroyed, then our banking system collapses, and then we don't have money. We can't go to our jobs, so we're worried about the economy. How are these jobs going to still be there? Again, this makes us get serious. And I think we're going to have a new relationship with this. We have to have a healthier relationship with this, and I think it's going to transform and eventually really destroy this fiat capital driven life that we have. And maybe it's eventually something like a Bitcoin or something like that. I'm not saying I think it is Bitcoin or that it will be that, because I think what will happen eventually is there's going to be some decentralized way of handling our currency, because right now it's not. It revolves around a central bank of people that exploit the world and sell currency back to us, and this crazy system where we're beholden to the bankers. We're in dangerous territory, because right now you can see, as the government is making these moves to try to support the stock market, support the businesses, the people are like, yeah, we've been through this drill. We remember the last time this happened. We remember the last time these idiots gambled with our future and damn near crashed everything. We bailed them out and people got nothing. So the people are now watching and saying, okay, so eventually this could lead, this could lead to a huge uprising and upheavals. And I'm not saying it's going to be soon. This is a long transit. This Pluto through Capricorn is a long transit. I haven't done every part of it. I'm looking at how it's going to be playing out to 12, 15 years. By the end of the next 12 to 15 years, we will have a new monetary system and policy. Maybe it's Bitcoin. So far, Bitcoin hasn't shown, because Bitcoin trades just like an option, like a commodity. It goes up and down with the market. Maybe that'll change. But if at some point Bitcoin has to have some sort of inherent value, which it doesn't yet, which means you can't spend it. It doesn't have inherent value like gold or silver, which currency has to be backed up by something of inherent value. Now it's not. The value is determined by a group of bankers, and they control it. This is getting grappled with right now, and Pluto going through Capricorn for the next 12 to 15 years is going to shake that out. So there could be huge upheavals in our economies. It's already going to change. We're already going to change, like I said, our relationship to work and telecommuting and all that stuff, which is great news for people that interact with me, like my students and whatnot. We're going to have some growing pains now, but those of you who have aspired to be an online teacher, have an online business, all that, this is your time. Get busy. What are you waiting for? You're just sitting home crippled in fear? You probably got a couple months. I mean, again, I hope you're not struggling for money or health or anything like that. I seriously hope and pray there'll be some relief, but don't waste this time in just fearful projections. The next wave is going to support people that know how to do that, know how to do this sort of thing, and directly exchange energy that way. So again, this is the way I see Pluto going through Capricorn for the next, again, 12 to 15 years, is the opportunity and the necessity and the need for us to transform our entire relationship with those Capricorn themes: money, time. It's the karmic, Saturn-ruled Capricorn is we feel the results of our karma. It's a collective energy. Pluto is a collective energy. I don't see it necessarily as an important personal thing to evaluate for people. That's just how I practice, and even in this regard. But it's a collective energy where our collective karma is going, and we're feeling, and Capricorn is a sign of karmic justice in that regard. Saturn is saying, here's what you've been doing, and here's the weight and the gravitas of that, of those energies, of those activities. This is what it's done. It's pushed the resources of the earth to the brink, and it's unsustainable. And I'm going to send all of you home to stop for a while and show you what you are doing. Show you what you're doing. Because the next wave might be harsher and harder. And if you just try to recover from this and then go, okay, now let's get back to our rapacious ways, the next one might not be so merciful. Let's hope and pray that we're able to do that. And so, again, I think that this particular wave, it's going to be hard, especially for a couple months. But again, I think by the time we hit the real hot weather, especially, that is going to naturally take care of some purification, because we already know these viruses don't live in extreme heat. They live in your nasal and mucous membranes. Again, it doesn't mean that those things can't hang on. It certainly can, and that's not the miracle cure by any means. But we're doing this social distancing that's going to mitigate. Again, the sad thing is that there's so much ineptitude at many governmental levels that it's going to be a heavy price to pay, and it's going to be very hard on our economy. It might even crash economies and send things into a terrible way. It's already going to be it's already going to be very, very hard. There might be some jobs that don't come back, and I think it's going to linger on. Even if, hopefully, the best case scenario that I think this thing really pressures the system for a few months, that's still, the effects of that are going to linger on and be a drain on world economies for a while. There might be a temptation to start too soon and then have it flare up again. Again, all the while we're going to be working on cures. The update that I did a couple days ago, I stick to, because again, we're going to have some very auspicious transits where I think we're going to get a workable antidote, not a cure, but something to treat the symptoms. I think it's going to come within the next few months, and that will turn the tide in a lot of ways. Or other kinds of, again, solutions that make it hopefully not as bad as we think. Again, and I say this because of the dignity of the planets. We have all these exalted planets coming, and that's what they show. Like I said a couple days ago, here on the brink of a pandemic, we couldn't expect a much better astrological scenario than we have. The best thing you hope for is that planets are strong and in good dignity. And that's what we got. Saturn in its own sign. We're going to have exalted Mars. All of that is coming to bear on this problem in about a week. Less than a week with Mars. And then Jupiter comes in, and then we'll have Venus goes into Taurus. Again, it's going to be there for 4 months. It's usually only there for about a month. And then we're going to have an exalted Sun as well. And then that's going to be joined the Venus and Taurus. So the next several months looks about as good as we could hope for what we're trying to do. So that's why I'm predicting this time right now is going to unfold more graciously than we think. That the darkest projected paranoid possibility is not going to happen like that. But it's going to be hard. And the benefit and the gift will be that we're going to dodge a bullet here to some extent. But are we going to learn the lesson, or are we going to load the frickin' gun again and point it at our head again after dodging the bullet? So this is what this is what Pluto going through. This is what Pluto going through Capricorn is all about. This is what the way I see it, and the things that we need to be looking for. And again, as always, the thing that's going to get us through is aside from all this stuff in the world, because again, talk about that in other videos. This is a time, again, for our spiritual practices, especially like, again, the pranayama. If you're not doing pranayama, again, you want to keep your body strong and healthy, do those breathing practices, that strong pranayama, to infuse your body with prana and energy and vitality. You can learn how to do it online since you're in your home, if you're not going out. That strong, powerful pranayama to make your mind strong and to purify your nadis and your respiratory system. Also, anuloma viloma, alternate nostril breathing, again, fills your body and mind full of vitality. Saying prayers like Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu, Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. These prayers for world peace, these are things that we can offer to each other, offer to the world. So it's a time where we have to pray for each other, and we have to come together in that way. But things are going to be changing, they're going to be transforming. This Pluto in Capricorn is putting us on the brink and on the verge of big shifts that are happening in our monetary policy, in our relationship to structure, and this expectation that we've had even a month ago that, well, everything will be fine. It's all fine. It's all stable. It's all working. It's work. Yeah, that's environment. Yeah, gas, gasoline, environment, eating animals. So whatever. It's fine. It'll all work out. Environment, global warming, whatever. No more whatever. Whatever is done. Whatever is over. It's real now. We need to change. So that's where we're at. As Amy Eager says, humanity needs something huge to wake up. Yes. And again, look at the last 12 to 15 years, the time that I mentioned. The previous 12 to 15 years that we had when Saturn went through Sagittarius. Again, this was at the start of the second George W. Bush term around 2005 or so. We became very, before that, people were fired up and gung-ho about, we're going to go to Iraq and kill the terrorists and all. There was this kind of thing and a total disillusion. George W. Bush left office. He was the most unpopular president I think we've ever seen. And we rode this wave of hope. There was this hope. Oh, Obama, the audacity of hope. Hope. We have something to hope for. We have this young guy. He's speaking all this stuff about how there's change and there's going to be accountability and progressive and all this stuff. Didn't do it. It was variations on a theme. He was better than what we had as an option both times, but it's not what we thought. Not to mention there was a backlash against it. I'm not blaming it all on him. It's a system that's horrible. All of these systems, these corrupt systems, again, that's also Pluto in Capricorn. All of these political systems, these corrupt systems as well. It's the same thing. All of this plutocracy. Capricorn is saying, yes, all of these corrupt monetary systems and practices based on international money, and the businesses own the governments. Nobody has any voice. There's plenty of money, plenty of resources, and we get none of it. And this has got to change. It's going to change all over the world. It could be difficult. But we need a big change. This is not sustainable anymore. And this kind of, again, understanding that we're all in it together now. We're all in it together. Is the big thing also right now, this interdependence. And we learned it in that the big way we learned it was in this Pluto through Sagittarius. We really became aware of this, that we're all in it together. There was enormous tolerance for all this stuff. and enormous intolerance, enormous skepticism and cynicism about our government, this government, fake news. We can't trust anything. What do we believe in? We're just like, brr. Pluto was just like ripping that whole idea apart that we can trust our leaders. And who are our leaders? Again, Sagittarius, it's not just religion. It's what we believe. And so Pluto going through Sagittarius the last 12 to 15 years, notice how our beliefs really changed. How many people still believe 9/11 was really what we were told it was? How many believed it in 2005 compared to how many believe it now? How many believe that the government is telling you the truth now? How many believed it then? Again, look at this, how Pluto, the previous 12 to 15 years where we just came from, was just taking a jackhammer to all of that. Sagittarius is about our philosophies, and it really polarized around all of our philosophies. We went from George W. Bush in his second to just getting elected to a second term. The fact that he got elected to a second term was remarkable to me. To 4 years later, Barack Obama, a black man, to 8 years later, Donald Trump. I mean, talk about being philosophically absolutely rudderless, with no clue about where we're going or why or what in the world is going on. That's Pluto and Sagittarius. But in the midst of that, notice how much more consciousness and awareness and compassion for people that are suffering, and the tolerance toward women and gays and this and that. And notice your personal renaissance during that entire time. Because again, we realize the interdependence of everything. How many conservative Christians study Jyotish now, or whatever the heck it is? Pluto in Sagittarius was going through that time, going, on the other side of it, it looks like this. So again, this is why these outer planets, it's not some explosive event. It's a slow thing where it's showing this long kind of generational, or, decades to decade and a half transformation. So we're entering this now where right at the beginning of it, especially as it lines up with Saturn, there's this whole shock to the system. It's a shock to the system right now because the system is about to get obliterated. This system ain't working on any level for anyone except the plutocracy, except the ones at the top. They want to keep it all the way it is, and it can't. So I hope this was helpful, and, got a little fired up about it, but it's the stuff to get fired up about. This is big stuff. And again, I want people to understand that, again, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through it. Look at the opportunities. Like I said, enormous opportunity. It's going to be a great improvement in our work life. We're going to get more time. All of these things it's going to change a lot of things for the better. Be ready for it. Be ready for it. And also be vigilant to everything going back to the way it was. Okay, now that we've got this, let's all start eating meat and killing everything and blah, blah, blah again. Let's all drive to our buildings again. I don't think that's going to happen. But get ready for that next wave, especially of remote work and the opportunity that it affords you. And we'll all be good. So we'll leave it at that.